For more on this, let's bring in climate specialist Durwood Zaelke, who joins us live now from Washington. Thank you very much for your time. First of all, Durwood, tell us about this ICJ hearing on climate change. First of all, what do you hope will come from it as a climate specialist?
There are three different processes for advisory opinions. We heard from the first one, the UN law, the Sea Tribunal. And that was a strong opinion that gave additional protection to the marine environment. We have the ICJ, or the World Court one, that's going on right now. And we also have the Inter-American Court of Human Rights advisory opinion on the climate emergency that also has had two different sessions of hearings, and we expect a decision from that regional court sometime fairly early, first quarter most likely, next year. And then we will see the World Court issue its opinion. Now, as you point out, it's an advisory opinion. And the clip you showed of the youth leader from Vanuatu saying that to the court, you possess the power. And the question is, how much power does the court possess? It has the power to articulate what climate law is today and what states should be doing. It does not have, as part of the advisory opinion, the ability to implement that decision. That must be done still at the level of each individual country. But it is a step along the way to strengthening the rule of law, which we have not been able to do successfully through the treaty process. You showed a clip just a moment ago of the failure of the plastics treaty because the fossil fuel industry will not yet accept a cap on the production of plastics, which are based on fossil fuels.
Durwood, I did want to follow up on that. Yeah. Apologies, I did want to follow up on that. The global plastic pollution talks, as you say there, they've failed to come up with a deal. Why have they failed 2 years on, and what will it take?
Well, it's the same syndrome that we saw in Baku for the Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement, the 29th annual meeting of the climate negotiations. In both cases, for the climate negotiations and for the plastic negotiations, the fossil fuel industry has stood in the way of consensus. And because the way we do our treaties, we require consensus of all of the parties. Now, you also mentioned that there are some countries are saying perhaps the consensus process should no longer apply. Well, one way to get around that would be to say, let's get together with the countries that are willing today to take a stronger stance on climate and have them agree to a treaty and then invite others to join. We did this basically with the landmine treaty. We would refer to it as a build it and they will come approach. And that may be where we have to evolve for climate as well.
Durwood, on those global plastic pollution talks, the chair's been putting on a brave face. Is he right to have said that some progress has been made?
Yes, sure. Some progress has been made. But if it's not fast enough, the parties who are most vulnerable have to decide, do they just walk out and say, we're not going to accept a treaty that isn't strong enough to solve the problem it's dedicated to solving? So you listen to the lawyers who are presenting in the ICJ case today, and several of them have pointed out, in the whole history of climate negotiations under the UN, climate emissions have gone up 50%. Okay. That is not a successful approach. So can we find, another way to do this? As I said, perhaps build it and they will come, perhaps a sectoral approach, building on the success of the Montreal Protocol, the treaty that has already put the stratospheric ozone on the path to recovery and has solved an amount of climate change that otherwise would equal the more than half that carbon dioxide causes today. So we have some examples of one example of a successful treaty, and we need to look to that more carefully as well.
Durwood, really appreciate you talking to us here at TRT World as ever. Durwood Zaelke speaking to us live there from Washington.